Yo, what's up guys, Grim here, and in today's video we're finally gonna be tackling it. We're gonna be tackling min-maxing boss farming. So in this video, I want to kind of introduce you guys to the way that I'm gonna be approaching min-maxing boss farming, and then we're gonna get into a little bit more detail later on in the video. But initially, I just wanted to go over the basics of boss farming and how I'm viewing it from a profitability standpoint. So in PoE, obviously there's a lot of different types of bosses. More and more get introduced every league with more and more chase items attached to them. So in this video, we're going to be using quite a few examples. You can see here in the background, we're farming Shaper, just for a little bit of spice there in the background. So as I mentioned before, I haven't tackled much of this content before, and that is because it has a fairly low barrier to entry and is quite a static kind of return. But this league, I've been introduced to a kind of wide range of opinions and ways that you can make it very profitable. So let's get straight into it. What is everything we need to know about boss farming? So to begin with, there is a static cost associated with every boss, pretty much every boss at least in the game, apart from like Uber Elder and stuff like that. And what I mean by that static cost, I mean it's the cost of entry. So for Shaper, it's the price of the 4 fragments. For like Venomous or Feral, it's the price of the yellow beasts plus the red beast, and that'll like bring you with a cost. And like for stuff like 3 and 4 ways, it's the emblem costs. So all of these have a static cost, and you'll always be able to know how much you're investing, and there's not really much RNG involved. Comparing it to mapping, where you might spend 100 sextants versus 140 per 100 maps or something like that. So it's pretty much consistent, and you're going to be able to track that 100% of the time, and it's very, very simple to know how much you'll be spending. And then as a result of that, you know exactly how profitable it could be based on how much you earn. So that's very, very interesting, and while it simplifies things slightly, it is still very good to have that information there. So a static cost and a static entry fee. The next thing is, that I want to mention, is that boss killing has a fairly low barrier to entry, with the exception of Legion emblem farming. So that's the 3, 4, and 5 ways. That's got a bit of a higher barrier to entry just because of the way the mechanic works. But for things like Shaper, Uber Elder, all of the Bestiary bosses and stuff like that, they have a very low barrier to entry. And what I mean by that is everyone and pretty much any kind of character can kill them and reap the rewards associated with them. There's no real like kind of risk in running them, and you're pretty much going to get the loot every time. So this is what made me particularly adverse to running bosses in the first place, because there's not too much you can do to kind of like protect your position in like kind of selling stuff and all that kind of stuff. It's not very min-maxable. It's kind of like almost like the blight mechanic. The boss fight's going to take X, you're going to get Y, and the entry cost is this. So it's kind of like predetermined how much you're going to earn. So that's another very important thing to know. The next thing is that there is predetermined loot every time. So you know how much it's going to cost to enter, you know how long it's going to take pretty much, and then you know what you're going to get out the other end. So this is pretty much going to map out exactly what you can expect to make from the boss farming and all that good stuff. But we're going to go into a little bit more detail here, because this is the min-maxable part. This is where you can look to get a bit of an edge, and why I'm now particularly interested in boss farming. So the predetermined loot, what are we going to be talking about here? Basically, this is the boss's loot table. So over the years, people have kind of like come together, they've done like 50 Shaper runs, and they've said, I've gotten like 2 Star Forges and stuff like that. And this is the information that allows you to make educated decisions on whether something's worth it to farm and what thing to farm at any point in the league. So, as I mentioned in the past, obviously we've had a lot of people do that, and we've got some kind of assorted, mixed results all over the internet, and they kind of somewhat come together to give you a bit of a picture, but there's no one who's actually gone out there and killed like 100 of every boss to really get a solid idea of the exact drop tables at an exact point in time, all by one person and all by a reputable person. So I think with that information though, you would be able to make some very interesting decisions at lots of different points in the league and potentially make a lot of currency. So that's what we're going to go into now. Basically, my mission over the Blight League is going to be to kill 100 of most of the bosses in the game and record their loot for you guys. And what this is going to allow us to do is create a spreadsheet with the following. We're going to be able to record the current expenses of PoE Ninja, we're going to be able to record all the boss drops, and then we're going to have big fat percentages next to those boss drops about what the chance of those is to drop, and then it's going to spit out a number of how profitable that boss will be after running 100 of them. And basically with this, you will actually be able to decide and ascertain exactly how profitable any boss is at any point in any league, assuming they don't change the drop rates. And this is extremely powerful information to have, because across all the leagues, you can go look up the history of all these boss drops and stuff like that. There's been points where some of these bosses are so profitable it's ridiculous. For example, Shaper at the start of the league, Bestiary at the start of the league. Just recently, we had the Bestiary bosses be extremely profitable, and we'll go into that in a little bit in the video. But basically, what I'm saying is sometimes bossing and like emblem farming is just so much more profitable than mapping. It's ridiculous. So profitable, in fact, that you can sit down, grind out 100 of these things, and end up with a headhunter after just 100 runs. Completely insane, and it's almost guaranteed that you're going to get those results every time, whereas against something like doctor farming, that is definitely not the case. So very, very interesting and very appealing to someone like me, where I can kind of map out exactly how much I could and would make. And what we're kind of moving towards here with PoE is kind of always having this kind of spreadsheet to tell us what's most optimal to farm now, what should I be farming, how can I make maximum currency, and that is very interesting to me, and it's kind of like automating the process a little bit of deciding what you should farm. So, with all that out of the way, let's get into it. I've got a few examples here, and the first set of bosses we're going to be covering in our 100 tests is Bestiary. Now, I haven't quite finished up this test yet. I've done 3 of the 4 beasts, and I have only Cretiani left to test. So I've done Farrell, Venomous, and Sackawal, and I do have information on their drop tables, but that's going to be a separate video, and all of these kind of themes will be separate videos. So for example, Bestiary will be a video, Shaper will be a video, the Beast will be a video, etc. And Beast will be up first, but we are going to take a quick look at the boss Venomous, and we'll take a look at how we're going to evaluate the profitability of this boss. So as we talked about earlier, the first thing we need to do is figure out the entry cost. So let's get into it. The first thing we need is a phenomenal hybrid arachnid. And this is basically from the Bestiary mechanic. You can catch it in red maps, and I think a few of the yellow maps as well. But basically, this guy's going to run you about 14C. And I'm going to assume that you have yellow beasts kind of in your menagerie already, so we're not going to count them as a cost. So the first point here is that we're going to take 14C to run the boss Venomous. And Venomous has a drop table, of course, and we'll quickly look up that drop table now. So let's go to Unique Armors, and we'll type in Venomous. So these are all the items that we can see drop from Venomous. So you can see we have a Shroud, Spinnerets, Toxins, and the Weave here at 60C. So at the point I actually did this test, Venomous Weave was 1 Exalted Orb, and the actual beast itself was 40C. So we've got a bit of a shift here. Obviously, a lot of people have been running this, myself included, and extracting all the money out of that and all the opportunity. But we're going to go over the results with today's economy, though, so that you guys can kind of get an understanding of how it might be now. So yeah, 60C for Venomous Weave, that's actually a pretty large amount when you compare it to the cost of the key. So it takes 14C to enter, so let's say we get a Venomous Weave every 4 runs, that already pays the cost of the key off, and then we get all this kind of stuff for free. But with Bestiary, there's actually a very unique mechanic at work as well. When you kill a Bestiary boss, you do in fact actually capture that boss, which is actually very valuable as well. And you can see over here, Venomous, which is the boss, once you kill him, you capture him, is actually worth 13 or 14C himself. So that's pretty interesting right there. You've got a very unique mechanic with this boss fight in the fact that it actually almost completely pays for itself 100% of the time without any downside, which is very, very interesting indeed. And it's going to create, of course, a very profitable situation based on how common those gloves are. So let's get into a bit of a spreadsheet here, and I can give you guys an example. But before we begin, let's quickly take a look at all the boss fights and just really appreciate all the things in the game which I'll be testing here. I might not get to all these, but it's pretty interesting in my opinion, all the things that we can look at here. So of course we're going to be looking at first these guys down here, the Bestiary bosses, but more specifically, we're going to be looking at Venomous here. So I've gone ahead and put the data in a little bit of a spreadsheet. This is how I'm going to try and present all of the Bestiary bosses. And you can see here my results from my 100 Venomous kills. So all these were completed solo. Some of them were completed on Tornado Shot, but then I swapped over to my Necromancer later on because boy oh boy, there's a lot of chaos damage in the Venomous fight. So I definitely want to be Chaos Inoculation, and I'll be running on the Necromancer for all boss fights coming up, with the exception of delve bosses. So you can see here the drop breakdown. We can start to see a little bit of a pattern emerge over our 100 kills. We can see that the gloves are actually the most common drop, which is very interesting indeed, because it's also the most expensive drop. Now this is going to vary league to league based on what's popular and what's not, but yeah, very, very interesting that it's the most expensive one. In the past, we've seen the chest piece be very expensive, running around 1 exalt to 2 exalt sometimes, because it's very sought after, kind of spider-based kind of aura chest piece. But this league poisons what's hot, so that's why this one's expensive. As I mentioned earlier, this was about 1 exalt, so it's definitely dipped a lot since then, but there's still a little bit of meat on the bone in terms of profitability. So when you add all this stuff up, you can kind of see how much profit you'll make over 100 maps from all of these items. And by far, the best things here are actually the beast himself, at 14C each, as well as the gloves. You could almost ignore these and not even bother selling them, and it won't impact your profit too much. So let's go into the actual profitability of this kind of thing here. So you can see I've actually split this into 6 different columns here, and that is because of another unique mechanic to Bestiary. Let's cover the one man first. So obviously our expenses ran around 1,400 C, and then after expenses our profit was around 2,500. So if you're just running these solo, you're actually looking to make quite a lot of currency from this just right at the gate. The gloves do sell pretty well. Obviously Poison is brand new this league and lots of people are playing it. So yeah, you're not going to have any issues with those. In addition, they're also a hot kind of target for corrupting. Lots of people do like to corrupt these as well. In addition to that, you also need to keep in mind with boss drops, the better your rolls, the better they will sell. The 60C is the base point, and if you get a really good roll, it's worth looking it up and maybe trying to learn how to price those rolls, because specifically with like the Sackawall chest piece, a good roll could be anywhere between double to like 2.5 times the amount of the bottom roll. So definitely a very good point there with bossing, and you can increase your profit margin significantly. So that's very interesting indeed. So let's get into why I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all the way up to 6 man here. So with Bestiary, I'm not sure when it came into occurrence, but basically, if you have multiple characters present in the zone where a beast is captured before you encounter the beast, you actually all get that beast. So let me paint you a bit of an example. So let's say me and 3 buddies all zone into the Venomous boss arena at the same time, and then I go through and I kill Venomous. And we get the loot, it's all good. All 4 of us will get that spider. So that's 4 times the amount of beasts, leading to 4 times the amount of profit from that beast. So let's say we were doing a rota, kind of rotating our Venomouses. You're going to be able to make a lot more money that way than you would otherwise, and it's going to be more efficient to do so. And do that kind of stuff. So I have put it there, how much you can expect to make from that kind of scenario. Now the reason, you're probably saying that doesn't make sense because you're still splitting it 4 ways. The reason it's like that is because of a bit of a interesting workaround which I learnt from some of the Korean players who play PoE. So currently in the game, obviously the way we just discussed it, all you need to have is a character zone into the instance. So basically it doesn't matter what level they are, they don't ever have to see the boss, they don't have to touch the boss, they don't have to be near the boss. So what this basically allows you to do is, in PoE, it's not against TOS to have 2 clients open. You can create a separate account completely within the rules, and then have 2 accounts in that spider encounter yourself, leading to a much higher profit, and you can then steal that beast and then sell it on PoE Trade or your choice of trade website. So this method has been used by many popular streamers in the past for stuff like Delve League. I remember Havoc using 2 accounts, one to run maps to collect sulfite, and then he would get his Delver in to then click that sulfite node. So it's completely within the rules of PoE, and you're not going to get banned for that. And it will allow you to extract even more currency from your maps in Bestiary than you would before. So very, very interesting, and it will actually be allowing you to modify and augment this kind of boss drop table, essentially doubling the amount of beasts that you can get. So very, very interesting there. And this is going to be a common theme throughout these videos. Not only are we going to take a look at kind of like how profitable it is, but also how you can augment that profitability. For example, with pure breach stones, you can invite other people and kind of give them experience and carry runs and stuff like that. So we will be looking into that stuff as well. So hopefully you guys have a bit more of an understanding now of boss farming and how I'm going to be approaching it. And hopefully you guys are as excited as I am to see the drop tables of all of the bosses in the game firsthand from a source that you can trust and verify. And then hopefully we'll be able to whip up a massive spreadsheet and really be able to figure out the profitability of any boss at any time in any league. So that's going to be very, very exciting, and hopefully you guys are interested in checking out the Bestiary video, which will be coming up real soon. I'm actually going to probably finish all of those crab kills on stream, and you guys can come check that out on Twitch if you want. So until then, until next video, I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.